SNAP is our country's largest food assistance program and also one of our largest anti-poverty programs. And I really think of SNAP as being sort of a fundamental food safety net for our country in terms of ensuring that anyone who falls on hard times isn't falling between the cracks and still has access to that basic support that they need to buy groceries and make it through those tough times.
This is Hourglass, the podcast for United Way of King County in Seattle. Coming up, a conversation about SNAP, the Federal Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program. SNAP is one of the nation's most effective tools for addressing hunger and lifting families out of poverty. But federal lawmakers are currently considering nearly $300 billion in cuts to the program. In this episode, we will chat with Sara Seelmeyer, United Way Associate Director for Ending Hunger, and Elsa Young, United Way Food Security Impact Manager, about how those cuts would impact Washingtonians locally and statewide. We will also hear a special message from United Way of King County President and CEO Gordon McHenry Jr., and hear about a local volunteer opportunity. I'm your host, Joe Burris. Thanks for tuning in. For a program that serves an average of 42 million Americans each month and lifted 3 million people out of poverty in 2023 alone, the Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program, or SNAP, should never end up on a list of proposed federal budget cuts. But according to published reports last week, the U.S. House Agriculture Committee advanced legislation that includes nearly $300 billion in cuts to SNAP. The legislation also narrowed eligibility requirements for SNAP benefits and directs states to cover more of SNAP's cost. For Washington State, which is currently mired in a budget deficit of at least $12 billion, the impact of such cuts would be disastrous. Last year, more than 1.2 million Washingtonians received SNAP benefits, 34% of which were children under age 18, 22% of which were seniors. The state received about $2 billion in SNAP benefits from the federal government last year. And under the House Agriculture Committee's proposal to mandate states shoulder a larger percentage of SNAP costs, Washington might need to pay hundreds of millions of dollars for SNAP annually. Currently, anyone under age 18 is exempt from SNAP work requirements. But the Agriculture Committee's proposal calls for some adults to work 20 hours a week to maintain SNAP benefits, even if they have elementary school-age children. Currently, refugees and asylees are eligible for SNAP benefits immediately upon their arrival in the United States. But the Agriculture Committee's proposal would restrict SNAP eligibility to U.S. citizens and legal permanent residents. SNAP has historically been a federal entitlement program, meaning that anyone who meets the eligibility requirements receives benefits. But with this cost-sharing proposal, states would need to decide which populations to prioritize and which to cut. According to the Center on Budget and Policy Priorities, 53% of SNAP residents in Washington state are families with children, 38% are in families with members who are older adults or living with a disability, and 37% are in working families. SNAP also serves as a powerful economic stabilizer, providing more aid to low-income households during economic downturns and less during expansions. The Center on Budget and Policy Priorities says that between 2015 and 2019, SNAP lifted more than 150,000 people above the poverty line in Washington state. About half of those lifted out of poverty were children. At United Way of King County, we work to tackle food insecurity with programs like home grocery delivery, breakfast after the bell, and summer meals. And our advocacy efforts helped expand eligibility for more than 92,000 students statewide to receive free school meals under the USDA's community eligibility provisions. That is why we are seriously concerned about what the impact of such deep cuts to SNAP would mean for individuals and families statewide. This episode of Hourglass is a conversation about the importance of SNAP in our state and what we might expect should those cuts come to fruition. We'll chat with Sara Seelmeyer, United Way Associate Director for Ending Hunger, and Elsa Young, United Way Food Security Impact Manager. Sara begins our conversation discussing the possible impact of those proposed cuts to SNAP.
These are unprecedented cuts. We've never seen anything quite like this. The cuts would happen in a number of different ways, but ultimately it would mean that fewer people in our community are eligible for SNAP benefits and that families who rely on these benefits would be cut off from the program.
And where would we see that impact most in this state?
So there are a few provisions within the bill that we find particularly worrisome in Washington state. One of the provisions would expand work requirements to new populations in our state. That would include parents who have children ages 7 and older would be required to work at least 20 hours a week every week in order to maintain their SNAP benefits. That impacts more than 75,000 households in Washington state. We're talking about 7-year-olds. Those are kids who still have their baby teeth. These are first graders and second graders. Kids shouldn't be punished for the decisions that their parents do or don't make. A parent's ability to work should never take food away from their children. So we're especially concerned about that. One of the other provisions that has been proposed would implement a state cost share where states would be required to contribute to the cost of SNAP benefits. States already support some of the administrative costs of SNAP, but this would require states to actually pay for the food benefits themselves. Based on the current numbers that we've seen, Washington state would be required to pay about $390 million a year towards supporting those SNAP benefit costs. That's a lot of money, particularly right now when Washington state already has a budget deficit. And so that would mean that Washington state would have to pull money from other programs that are state funded or would have to cut SNAP benefits at a state level.
The Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program actually began as the federal food stamp program. According to the USDA website, the first food stamp program began in 1939, due in part to widespread unemployment and a surplus of food that the Department of Agriculture deemed unmarketable. The government issued 2 different colored food stamps, orange for purchasing any food and blue for food determined to be surplus. By the time the program ended in 1943, food stamps had been issued to 20 million people in nearly half of the United States. The program began again as a pilot in 1961, and in 1964, the Food Stamp Act made the program permanent. It was signed into law by then-President Lyndon Johnson following his declaration of the War on Poverty. In 2008, the food stamp program was renamed the Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program following a Food Conservation and Energy Act mandate. The name change was made to fight stigma around the program. Last year, United Way of King County launched an awareness campaign to dispel myths and stigmas about SNAP that keep eligible households from applying. United Way SNAP Awareness Campaign was created in partnership with Within Reach, a nonprofit organization in Washington state that helps families navigate complex social service programs. Among the misconceptions about SNAP is that those who have jobs are ineligible for SNAP benefits, or that unemployment makes people ineligible because they're not contributing to the workforce. Elsa pointed to other stigmas and misconceptions about receiving SNAP.
I think that there tends to be a belief that it's, a shameful thing to need assistance. Or there's also a common belief that if you are using SNAP, you might be taking it away from someone who needs it more. Mm-hmm. And so, these are all things that we have tried to talk with the community about and dispel, but they're hard things to root out.
Can you just talk about how important and how vital SNAP is to the people in this state, this county, this region?
Yeah. In Washington state, there's over 1 million people that are receiving SNAP benefits with an average benefit of over $300 a month.
Wow.
And so that is, money directly into the pockets of low-income households that need it to purchase groceries. And in, our current economic climate with the cost of groceries rising, that money is a lifeline for so many families. And so, it is so important that families know that it is a resource that's available to them, and that as long as they're eligible, they are entitled to those benefits as citizens of the United States.
I think I would also add that SNAP is our country's largest food assistance program and also one of our largest anti-poverty programs. And I really think of SNAP as being sort of a fundamental food safety net for our country in terms of ensuring that anyone who falls on hard times isn't falling between the cracks and still has access to that basic support that they need to buy groceries and make it through those tough times. Eligibility is primarily based on income. So SNAP is a program for low and low moderate earners. There are some additional eligibility requirements. So there are requirements around citizenship status. For some populations, there are additional requirements, but generally the sort of foundational piece around eligibility is really income-based.
So if I'm listening to this and it resonates with me, what should I do? Last question.
We encourage folks to reach out to their Congress members, ask that they support the SNAP program, demand no cuts to SNAP. It is critical that we are supporting and protecting this program right now.
Elsa and Sara, thank you so much.
Thank you for doing this.
To learn more about SNAP benefits and eligibility, log on to the SNAP page of the USDA's Food and Nutrition Service site at fns.usda.gov/SNAP. And log on to uwkc.org to learn more about United Way of King County's advocacy efforts and how you too can get involved. And now a word from United Way of King County President and CEO Gordon McHenry Jr.
I'm talking with you today because when I'm out in our region, people ask me, how are you doing? How is United Way doing? And I'm here to tell you that we understand there is a lot of chaos, there is a lot of anxiety, there is fear and deep concern for the well-being of our most vulnerable residents. And at United Way of King County, we are still here. We are still focused on supporting members of our community with their basic needs. We're still identifying and advocating for systems change to prevent so much socioeconomic challenges in our region. We're working hard to raise important resources that empower our delivery of services and empower our partners in community services. For us, we're going to stay focused on what matters most, and what matters most is the well-being of the Puget Sound region. Stay strong, stay close to us, we will stay close to you, and we will find a way to move forward as a community, notwithstanding the challenges that are around us every single day. Take good care. Thank you.
Do you love food and providing nourishment to local communities? The University District Food Bank is looking for volunteers to help serve food to members of its community. If you have just a few hours a week to give, you can make an impact on people's lives. University District Food Bank has volunteer opportunities Monday through Saturday, with some shifts during evening hours. For more information, log on to udistrictfoodbank.org. At United Way of King County, we are working side by side with communities to build an equitable future for everyone. Hourglass United Way is a podcast that highlights how we and our partners spend time making a difference in our communities. Our work is made possible by the generous donations from people like you. Please send comments and suggestions about our podcast to hourglassunitedway@gmail.com. To learn more about our work or to support United Way, log on to uwkc.org. I'm your host, Joe Burris. Thanks for listening. Until next time.